The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
So for our second session today, we welcome a team of educators to share their work in early childhood literacy for English learners. Dr. Sarah Chumney and Dr. Brittany Holloway, will you join me on screen?
Yes, we'd be happy to. I'm excited to share the things that we're going to do that we implement with our students at our school.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today in the ELL Collaborative. And to our viewers, Dr. Chumney and Dr. Holloway work together as ESL teachers at Salem Elementary. And they have some successful strategies for working with our youngest English learners. Since literacy is such a focus of early learning, this is important work. And so we look forward to hearing your ideas for successful classroom practices with young English learners. Dr. Chumney, Dr. Holloway, we're ready.
All right, we're going to share with you guys today early childhood literacy foundations for English language learners.
My name's Dr. Chumney. I'm happy to be here. And so this is my teammate, Dr. Holloway, and I'm very excited about giving you some strategies today. So we are ESL teachers at Salem Elementary in Murfreesboro. This is my 15th year of teaching, and I was a reading interventionist before I was an ESL teacher. And then before coming to Tennessee, I worked as a reading coordinator and coach in Wisconsin. And then I have primary grade experience in Australia, Washington, and Mississippi. I love working with ESL learners and teaching them how to read. I have a national board certification in reading and literacy. And then my doctoral study was really studying the foundations for young learners for ESL students. So we're happy to give you some ideas today that we hope you can take back to your classroom.
I'm Dr. Brittany Holloway, and I co-teach with Dr. Chumney at Salem Elementary, as we mentioned before, as ESL teachers. So this is my 10th year teaching, and my first 5 years I spent in the classroom as an early childhood teacher in grades kindergarten through 5th grade, or grades kindergarten and 2nd grade, sorry. And then I've spent the past 5 years as an ESL teacher. And it's just been a really exciting experience. And I'm really excited to share with you guys today some of the formative assessments that I implemented in my own dissertation study that we implement with our ESL students today. So the first thing we're going to look at today, guys, is our goal.
So our goal today is to provide some strategies and ideas to support ESL students in early childhood. And if you have any questions while we're talking, just put them in the chat, and we'd be happy to answer those at the end.
So as we move through this presentation today, it's just really important for us to look at the whole child, and we want to gather that background information before we can talk about strategies and formative assessments that we implement with our students to track their progress. So when we're looking at their background knowledge or their background of the child, we really want to make sure, guys, that we are checking to see these incoming kindergarten ESL students, have they been serviced in preschools that are integrated, where they're receiving additional services like SPED services? That would be important information for you to know for grouping and testing and screening purposes. And then for our 1st and 2nd graders, you want to make sure that you're looking to see, do they have WIDA Access screener scores? If they don't, then you want to start there. And if they have had the WIDA Access screener scores, then we want to check for the WIDA Access scores. And that will really help you to prepare the proper grouping of your students. The next thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is always collaborating with our classroom teachers. They can share with us the progress that they see in the regular education classroom, along with we can share the progress that they're making in our small groups in ESL. And when we discuss their progress with our teachers, in our district, we have elevation. So the students are monitored on a quarterly basis, and the teachers will fill out these forms on a quarterly basis. And we, the ESL teachers, get to review the information they share with us. And when we review that information, we can then provide them with any instructional strategies. If we see that a student flagged and they're struggling with something in the regular education classroom, we can also address it within our small group in ESL as well. Another thing that we would like to do with our notes and our elevation is we keep running records. So anytime that I attend a meeting or Dr. Chumney attends a meeting that's related to one of our students, our transitional students, we're taking notes. When we attend conferences, when we attend IEP meetings, anything that we feel is important, things that we're observing in our small group setting, we want to make sure that we're documenting that properly so that that can just help support that child to know what strategies will best work for them, what formative assessments do we need to conduct to see how that child is progressing and moving forward. Another thing that's really important, guys, is to make sure that you are communicating with your interventionists at your school. So when we have these incoming kindergarten students, they may fall into the categories of the tier 3 or the tier 2. And we really want to make sure that we share that information of our students list with our interventionists so they're aware that they are receiving those ESL services. And sometimes you run into that with your first and your second grade if they're new to your district, new to your school, and so on. Another thing that we want to look at is making that home to school connection. In our district, we're really fortunate because we do have family liaisons and we have translators. So if you're in a district where you don't have that available to you, we do implement Class Dojo on a daily basis with our families. And it translates in many different languages, and it's very helpful for us keeping that connection with our families. And then if you may not have this in your district, but this could be something that you could look at more, is language line. We will use that when we have conferences, when we have IEP meetings, when we need to have meetings with the parents, and we don't have access to a translator. So language line is always really convenient and quick to get someone on the line to help support us there. Another thing that we want to look at is conducting those formative assessments, and we look at conducting formative assessments in all the different language domains of listening, speaking, and reading and writing. Dr. Chumney and myself, we will attend data meetings. So if that's something that you're not doing now, I would really encourage you to talk with your interventionist, talk with your administrator, and see how you can make that happen so that you can have a voice for the students that you're currently serving and have a voice for the students that maybe have exit in their transitional students that, are struggling or they have questions and concerns about them. So just being in attendance there so you can share the data. Like here I have mentioned that we share Imagine Learning data, and that's a program that we implement with our students that looks at all the different language domains. And they have benchmarks, and we get to the students take them at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the school year. So it provides us an opportunity to see how they're progressing in their literacy and their oral vocabulary. And we like to bring to those data meetings, of course, their weighted access tests, any formative assessments. And then when we are collaborating with those classroom teachers, they can then share their progress in the iReady, they can share their progress in AIMS, and that's just supporting that student and knowing how to move forward with them. A really important thing here, guys, is to make sure that we're being culturally responsive. We want our students to come, we need to know where our students are coming from. We have to gather that background information of their experiences, their beliefs. Have these students experienced any type of trauma that we need to be aware of? Do they have former schooling? And if they do they have any gaps of their schooling? If they don't have former schooling, we need to be aware of that. Another thing that we like to utilize our translators, our family liaisons, is reaching out to the families to see how did they do in their L1, were they progressing at a normal rate? where there are concerns in their first language. And that just helps us to know how to move forward because we want to be able to best serve these students. So in the next slide, Dr. Chunmi is going to share with you guys more about the foundational skills.
Okay, so as Dr. Holloway discussed about the whole child, we recognize that our students come to us with lots of different backgrounds and experiences, but we also want to look at their assets that they bring to the classroom. So as we know from studying research, students benefit in the early childhood years with reading instruction to include phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So for our multilingual learners, that our students benefit from these, but they need to be adjusted for their language proficiency. So in the primary grades, we want to build that strong foundation in students understanding the print concepts, phonological awareness, phonics, and word recognition. Systematic phonics instruction with letter knowledge and phonemic awareness will help our students when it comes to their reading and writing in the WIDA portion of their test. So it's something that we do not want to overlook in our ESL classroom. So phonemic awareness is really the foundation for spelling and word recognition because our kids, they need to know how our language works. And so having this explicit instruction and these skills will give our students that knowledge. So in Murfreesboro City Schools, we have a scope and sequence for all our grade levels. So this helps ensure that students are being taught in a research-based and systematic approach. So the strategy we use in making sure we're providing our students with additional supports in understanding these early foundational skills is if students do not have that knowledge in their first language, then we need to really make sure we're consistent in providing them with practice and using these skills when they come to see us. So we know it takes students time to acquire the language and literacy skills. So we make sure that we reflect on our own teaching. If we see students are struggling or they're not making progress in the classroom, we want to try to address that and see what we can do better to help our students. So if students are continuing to not make progress, we know that early intervention can help. Another strategy that we use here at Salem is using data notebooks to keep track of student progress. Dr. Holloway is going to discuss this in more detail at the end of our session. But we have data notebooks where we collect their writing samples, their WIDA test scores, their iReady benchmarks and reading, their AIMS benchmarks. And this just gives us a good overview of how our students are performing. And this data book also helps when students move to a new grade level. So if they're still struggling, we can meet with that teacher and come up with a plan to best support them this school year. And this has also helped, going back to what Dr. Knox had mentioned, by keeping the data notebook, we were able to identify a gifted student in the second grade who is now moving forward in the process in third grade for getting his gifted testing. So it works for students that are, all students, but even students that are struggling and students that we want to recognize that are gifted and are heading towards more instruction based on their level. So also communication with classroom teachers is really valuable for understanding how students are doing in the classroom. So know and understand the assessments that teachers are using. This year we had a new program that was implemented in our school. And so at the beginning of the summer in the school year, I made sure I attended those trainings to see what our students would be exposed to in the classroom, what types of tests they would have. So that just gave me a better understanding when the teachers are asking me what concerns they have. I know what the assessments are about. So that's important to have that connection with the teachers. We also started this year attending grade level PLC meetings, which we're very fortunate now. Dr. Holloway and I share a classroom, so we were able to attend those meetings, and we've really shown and grown in how we strategically plan for our students to make sure that they're meeting those needs in the classroom, and as well as giving teachers ideas of what they can do in their classroom to help our students as well. So next, I will talk about the vocabulary environment. So vocabulary is one of my favorites to teach. So the vocabulary-rich environment, so the explicit teaching of vocabulary can be an important factor for students learning and building comprehension. A strategy that we use in the ESL classroom is pre-teaching vocabulary that aligns with the topics and standards in the classroom. So we teach vocabulary using explicit instruction, which is directed teaching of words. And then we also teach vocabulary using implicit instruction, where we teach those strategies to be used when they come across unfamiliar words that they encounter within a text. So for our students, they need to have multiple exposures and engagement of the words to be able to really use them in speaking and writing. So we want to make sure that students are making those connections between the ideas and concepts. So we also want to make sure that we use organized vocabulary and language routines. We use journals to keep vocabulary words that students can go back to when they're completing a Flipgrid response or writing prompt. This helps us give immediate feedback to students and provides additional supports if needed. The picture word induction model is also a great way that we have built on their vocabulary. We introduce a picture of a unit that they're going to be learning in the classroom, and the students have to describe the pictures, and we build vocabulary around the picture, and then they keep those in their vocabulary journal as well. We also use the FRAIR model, which helps students determine a better understanding of the words by using a graphic organizer. And classroom teachers are using, in the new EL curriculum that we have, they're using that same organizer. So kids are seeing that twice, and that's really helping the kids make that deeper connection with the vocabulary words that they're learning. So next, Dr. Holloway is going to talk more about our data notebooks.
So as Dr. Chumney previously mentioned, each of our students, they have a data binder. And if we ever go into switching our small groups for ESL, if our team grows, I know other schools and different school districts, you have larger teams. So it's really important, I think, to have these data binders so it makes that transition even easier. And then as the students switch to a different grade level teacher each year, you can have that to reference back of their writing samples, their weighted access scores, their previous goals, their current goals. It's just very helpful to see where the student is at so we can hold these learners to high expectations. So you can see here that in the data notebook, we have 5 tabs, and we have the data section, and then we have the 4 domains of language. In the data section, we always want to make sure that we have current weighted access scores, previous weighted access scores if we have access to those. We always meet with our students at the beginning of the school year, and we go over their weighted access score one-on-one, and we compare it to the prior years if that's available to us, to just show the students how much they grew, what areas we want to focus in moving forward in that current school year. And then we look at their Imagine Learning benchmark data, which I told you earlier that we collect that 3 times a year. So they take that assessment at the beginning of the year, the middle, and towards the end of the year. And that can just really show us how is the student growing in their literacy and how are they growing in their oral vocabulary. And then if we have any grade level data that their teacher shares that we have access to, this could be our iReady benchmark data. This could be our Ames Web data as well, where we're checking for their oral reading fluency. And then our students love to have the Grow and Glow reflections. We implement these during our spring and our fall student-led conferences. So the students really enjoy this because they're able to look through their data binder, they're able to look at their work samples and share areas that they feel that they're really strong in. And then they share again areas that they feel that they need to continue to grow in. And it's just really exciting for the students to be able to take those data binders, those glow and grow reflection sheets, and share those at those conferences with their family. When we're looking at the formative assessments and we're looking in the listening domain of language with our younger students, we like to keep this really fun. For the students, we provide them with a one-step instruction. Sometimes we provide them with a two-step instruction, and we just have them, circle things, we color things, they identify things in the picture, those sorts of things. And we generally do this towards the beginning of the year. We like to visit again at the midpoint and definitely before we conduct any WIDA access testing to just prepare them. With our speaking, we have taken the WIDA rubric for speaking and writing, and we've made it into a more student-friendly version. And this is something our students are referencing on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, multiple times a week. So we review this speaking rubric when we look at Flipgrid. So our students love Flipgrid Friday, as we call it at Salem Elementary, and they complete these Flipgrid speaking prompts, and they're usually covering topics that we have discussed in the previous week or the week that we're currently in, and the unit topic that we're discussing that is directly aligned to the standards that they're learning within their classroom setting as well. And it just provides the students a great opportunity to use that academic vocabulary like Dr. Chumney had mentioned earlier. And they get an opportunity to work on their writing because we always request our students to write out their response. And that gives them an opportunity to practice that writing, to add in that vocabulary. They'll rehearse it out loud to practice that speaking fluency. And then they get an opportunity to record the video. And then we like to provide them a chance to come back to that Flipgrid later on in the week. We come back on Mondays and we look at that. And the students have that speaking rubric, and we look at it and they will score themselves. So they provide themselves with a self-score, and they provide a reflection at the bottom. What's an area that they would like to improve in when they are looking to move forward and further Flipgrid responses? Do they need more academic vocabulary? Do they need to rehearse and practice their speaking? Do they need to speak louder, and so on? So those speaking reflections are really powerful, and our students really enjoy them. We've had really great experiences even with our newcomers. At first we definitely provide them with sentence stems and sentence starters, and maybe they repeat what we're saying, but we love the community that we've created in the classroom, because these students, even if they know that a student is a newcomer, they just love to be sharing with the other students and saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe how much the student is speaking now. So it's really rewarding to see the students encouraging other students who may not feel as confident, but we know that they're growing because we see it week by week. Another area that we look at in our speaking, but it's Imagine Learning, which I've mentioned before, is a program that our district uses and we implement with our students on a regular basis. It definitely targets all the different language domains, but they get an opportunity to use their headphones where they have the microphone, where they're practicing that reading recording, very similar where they're practicing their speaking recording on Flipgrid. And it just provides more opportunities to fluently speak in English that maybe they wouldn't have those opportunities in the regular education classroom because they're too shy, or maybe they don't have it at home because everyone is speaking in their first language. When we're looking at the reading domain, we want to first make sure with our younger students, we want to address, do they have any gaps in their letter identification? Do they have any gaps in their sound identifications that we need to go back and address? Because we want to start there before we build on to reading those consonant, vowel, consonant words. We want them to be able to decode those words when we're practicing oral reading fluency. And we always want to check to see, how are they doing with their sight word identification? Do they have any gaps in there? Is that something that we need to, create flashcards, send things home for them to reference, practice one-on-one, at the end of the class, if they have an extra minute or two, just, giving them that practice to close those gaps so that when we do conduct usually we do this bi-weekly, we'll conduct a reading fluency check. And this provides us an opportunity just to progress monitor our students. That way we can see, are they progressing towards reading materials on grade level? Do they need more intervention? What does that look like? And we know during this time, when we're conducting these formative assessments, we're exposing them to grade level texts. But when they come to us in our small group setting, we provide them with text that is on their reading level so that everyone has access to language-rich texts that they're able to read. And then when we're looking at our writing rubric, again, we go back to that kid-friendly rubric that we've created and we've shared with our students, and they know the expectations, and they complete writing samples. So we have writing samples that we complete at the beginning of the year, towards the middle of the year. Our students will complete one towards the end of the year, just sharing their successes and things that they're looking forward to on the summer. So we do have those types of writing prompts, but we also have writing prompts that go back to the content that we've taught in this school year that goes back to the unit that they've been learning in our classroom and in their regular education classroom. And so we'll review that writing sample, we'll give them feedback, they're able to make edits. With our younger students, we always provide them with sentence stems, sentence starters, word banks as needed. We determine that usually on a student by student basis, just to see, we don't want to hold a student back if that's not something that they need, but we definitely provide it for those students that need that. So these are just some of the things that we look at for our data notebooks.
Thank you for listening to our strategies today for English students in the primary grades. Here's our contact information. If you think of anything you would like to see or know further, you're welcome to contact us.
And then we've added here references that we've mentioned in our presentation today and resources. And some of these resources are free resources. Some of them are paid resources. Some of them you can go in and you can do a free trial. But if you have any questions about these, feel free to reach out, because these are things that we're regularly implementing in our lessons week by week, pulling articles from, adding flip grids to our students, or just utilizing them regularly. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Holloway and Dr. Chumney, for sharing your expertise. I just loved hearing about your data notebooks, and I can't imagine how much effort it takes to keep all of that organized. It seems that you're both really organized and really dedicated teachers. So I really appreciate you sharing your ideas with us on this live stream. We've gotten lots of questions, and many about the tools and resources that you have mentioned. So one of the questions is specifically, how do you utilize Imagine Learning in your daily lessons?
I can answer that question. So our Imagine Learning, we have the privilege this year of having Imagine Learning license for each of our students. We know that that will be a shift in our upcoming year. We'll focus on different grade levels that will have Imagine Learning, and it will be based upon students' needs. Right now, we start off our lesson where Dr. Chumney and I are in a classroom together, so we co-teach together. So we will start out at the beginning of our lesson, all of our students together. We're, presenting our lesson to them, just a quick segment of our expectations, our goals for the day, and then we'll break off into our small groups and we'll do 2 different small group rotations, both of us. So it ends up being that I have half of my students and Dr. Chumney has the other half of her students, while we have our other half of our students, they're working on Imagine Learning lesson, and then we'll go back and we'll flip that. And so we switch our groups, each of us will switch our groups, and then we'll work with the second group of kiddos. And then those other kiddos will get an opportunity to complete their Imagine Learning lessons. So we try to, 20 minutes whole group, 20 minutes in your small group, 20 minutes in your Imagine Learning. And, it works out pretty well. I'm a timekeeper. So Dr. Chumney knows we just use timers and we set them all the time, and that keeps us on track so that we can try to get to everything that we want to in that lesson.
And do you use another curriculum in addition to Imagine Learning? Do you have an ELL specific curriculum that you use?
I'll answer that. So this year, I mentioned that we started a new program called EL for Tier 1 instruction. So we've been implementing a lot of those topics into our ESL lessons. So we've been working on that and just building background knowledge for our kids before they're exposed to it in the classroom. So that's been really good. And just looking at their science and social studies standards and trying to align those with their EL topics. And then we just pull in resources to help support them on that.
So when you refer to the units in the classroom, you're talking about really supplementing the classroom curriculum by pre-teaching or reteaching key concepts to support students' engagement and comprehension in the mainstream classroom.
That's correct. Yes, we usually, like when we're planning, we'll look ahead to see like what the final outcome or assessment is for that module. And then we plan to see how we can get our students to be successful at that. So that's been very helpful this year, just seeing and supporting what the classroom teachers are doing. And the kids feel very confident in the classroom, the gen ed classroom, because they're able to give the background knowledge when they're talking about it in class. So it's been very helpful to use that. So
Great. And what do you use to teach foundational skills? Do you use the resources from the state of Tennessee, or do you use other materials to teach foundational skills?
Well, a few years ago, we were trained in 95% phonics, and it worked really well because at the time our district was also training us in letters training, which letters training is phenomenal in learning the foundational skills for all students. And that really aligned to that program. So we found a lot of success in that. My students were writing, spelling correctly. They were very confident in their reading. And now this year, since we have an EL curriculum, the 95% has moved more towards intervention in Tier 3. And so the students will get 95% in intervention instead of SPIRE, which is what they had before. So we've been using whatever EL has that the teachers will ask for more help in. And then Imagine Learning also provides an intervention toolkit. So for that, we can individualize based on what students are struggling in. So we can print additional resources that go along with what they're learning in Imagine Learning. So that's been really helpful too.
Another question that people have about is elevation. They'd like to know more about your experience with elevation. A couple of districts are considering that platform and specifically wondering how elevation supports ILP data gathering and monitoring. And do you use that with active students, with monitored students, transition students, all of the above, waiver students? How do you use elevation?
I can answer that question. So we have elevation, and we have even our non-English language background students that are listed on our roster for our school. We have, transitional students. They can be transitional 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. They can be our current ESL active students. We can have our students that are waivered on that list as well. It provides us an opportunity to check and recheck to make sure we haven't missed any kids. It's just really helpful. I've been in districts where we didn't have elevation, and I just think it's amazing because if I have a student that transfers to another school in my district or another school that transfers to another state even that has elevation, it allows all those monitoring notes that we've gathered from teachers' input that transfers. All the running record notes that we have put in there as ESL teachers, it transfers along with even the instructional strategies. We're able to upload documents. It just is endless resources, I feel like, on there, even for providing our ESL students with instruction as well. And I just think it's a great resource. I'm very thankful that our district has it. And I know Dr. Chumney probably agrees with that as well.
Yeah, and we have to monitor our students every 9 weeks. So it's been very beneficial because the teachers fill out that monitoring form and we can immediately see if a child flags, if they need additional supports. So that's just another way that we see that, okay, we need to meet with this teacher as soon as possible because our students are flagging. So it's a great resource. I highly recommend it for any district because it really just provides all the student information in that one program. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing about Elevation. Another viewer is interested in how you've modified the speaking and writing rubrics to be kid-friendly. I'm wondering if, first of all, if people email you, if you wouldn't mind just sharing copies of those, if they are interested in how you've modified, but also maybe speak a little bit to what are some of the ways that you modified those rubrics to make them more kid-friendly.
I would just say that, so I know for sure on our rubric, we don't have it all the way going up to 6. We have it going up to 5. 6 is the highest level that you can acquire on the WIDA Access. And also we have just made the vocabulary more kid-friendly, help them to understand it. If you look at the WIDA Access rubrics, it's very wordy. And we've just kind of condensed that down, pulled out the main pieces. I know that, level 1, we've kind of explained to the students, this is, if you have no response or you have a one-worded response, and then, we go into, that's for our speaking. And then level 2, you provided a short phrase, maybe it wasn't a complete sentence. So it's just encouraging our students to be more aware of, am I responding in complete sentences? Okay, if I am responding in complete sentences, am I providing academic vocabulary? Am I providing multiple details in my speaking, sample, or in my writing sample? Even our older students, are they providing text evidence that we have referred to in class? So I think it's just really helped them to be aware, and I completely don't mind sharing that. And if anyone else has one that they use as well, we're always looking for ways to adapt and grow and improve that as well.
Thank you so much for being so generous to share those. I think that's really helpful to have students aware of their own goals and targets, right? When they're aware of the expectations, it really helps them be successful. So that's a really useful tool. Another viewer is asking how you collaborate with the classroom teachers. Do you have a common planning or PLC time? How do you work in that time where you collaborate with those classroom teachers?
Well, this year is the first year that Dr. Holloway and I have shared a classroom, and it's really been a blessing because if the teachers are meeting in a PLC, one of us can attend that PLC and the other can help with our classroom. So that just helped. That's been one way that we collaborate with teachers. Another way is we are through Elevation, just taking notes and documentation, so we know what teachers we need to talk to if it's important. The leadership team, I'm on the leadership team here, so a lot of times they'll ask questions, and so I'll be able to get back to them right away. So I feel like our school community is very collaborative, and we're just not afraid to come to each other's door and ask questions if we need to. But the data meetings and PLC meetings, I believe, are really key for just really being part of the team. And it's helped with our collaboration with our teachers in PLC and just building those relationships with their teachers. So that's really helped.
Another thing that we've done this year as well that is provide our teachers with, we call it muffins and monitoring. So it provides them an opportunity to come to us before school. We've hosted it after school, and they can come in and ask us. We usually do that in the first quarter, so that the teachers are aware of how to complete those monitoring forms on Elevation. They can ask any questions. And then we've provided professional developments at our school for our teachers to attend with the WIDA standards, with Elevation, and those sorts of things have been really helpful for our teachers.
Wonderful. Our last question is a more theoretical one. Early developmental progress plays such a role in young children learning to read and write. How do you consider those factors related to developmental progress when you're working with young students designated as English learners?
Well, I guess just looking at each child individually and just knowing their background and what they come with us, when they come to us. We have, we look at our language standards and where the students are at, and we try to, to understand those developmental processes. And I have a really good book that would probably explain it a lot better. If you don't mind me sharing, this book here gives a lot of great resources for understanding the developmental progress of our students in ESL and what the expectations are for different age groups. And this has been really helpful for me when looking at the student and trying to determine like how I can best support them. So to answer your question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Holloway and Dr. Chumney, for sharing your expertise, for sharing all of the amazing strategies and tools that you've put together to keep track of student data and really help develop foundational literacy skills among young learners designated as English learners.